Parliament is back in 2 days, and the Prime Minister says he's just set this country on a course to dramatically change its economic future by approving a list of big projects he says are nation-building. I'm Catherine Cullen, and this week on the House, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre sits down with me in studio. Alberta's Premier sounds pretty pleased about that major projects list, so why is Poilievre so quick to dismiss it? And a topic he's rarely talked publicly about, is he worried about climate change? Then,
from now on, Canada's new government starts by asking ourselves for major projects, how? How can we do it bigger? How can we do it faster?
As mines, a gas pipeline, and high-speed rail are among the projects getting a green light from Mark Carney, who are the winners and losers? Our panel of political watchers weighs in. And former Liberal Cabinet Minister Catherine McKenna. Her new book sheds light on the threats and abuse she faced in politics, but she is still encouraging others to run. Why she says it's worth the price. But we begin with Pierre Poilievre and Canada's new list of national projects. The House is now in session.
When I looked at the first 5 projects, I thought, finally they get it, because it's all the projects that have been difficult to build. It's mining projects, it's LNG Canada, and I think that demonstrates a real shift in the focus of this government. And I would just ask people to be patient. I mean, we went from having chased away, $500 billion worth of investment over the last 10 years. You can't turn that around immediately.
That is Alberta's Conservative Premier, Danielle Smith, very happy with the federal government's new national interest project list, saying she believes she's on the path to seeing a new pipeline built. But not everyone is as impressed. Federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has dismissed the list as basically Mark Carney sending an email. On Friday, Poilievre joined me in the CBC studio in Ottawa to talk about that and a host of other issues before the House of Commons returns on Monday. Hi, Mr. Poilievre. Welcome back to the House.
Good to be with you.
You heard Danielle Smith there. She's saying, be patient. Albertans are finally being heard by the federal government. You're an Alberta MP now. She's your premier. Are you going to take her advice?
Well, we have no choice. We've had to be very patient with Mark Carney because he's now been Prime Minister for 6 months. Hard to believe. And he hasn't delivered a permit for a single nation-building project. In fact, construction is down. Investment is down by $62 billion under Mark Carney, which is the biggest net outflow of investment in history, according to the National Bank. And so far, he's succeeded at setting up an office with 1 employee, and he sent a list of 5 projects that were already approved or almost approved before he got there. And now he's picking up the football in the end zone to spike it. But in reality, some of the projects that he put on his list have already been under construction. It's really incredible to see a Prime Minister show up and take credit for something that happened before he even got there and then claim that it is a new achievement. But I think we're going to see a lot of that. I think he's been very good at confusing activity with achievement. Lots of meetings, lots of politicians patting themselves on the backs.
So is Danielle Smith confused then? Is that what you're saying?
If you look at the actual results, there have been none. As for a pipeline, to the Pacific, we already had one. It was called the Northern Gateway. Justin Trudeau killed it.
Well, the courts said that there was not sufficient consultation.
With respect, the project was approved, and the Trudeau cabinet killed it. They vetoed it. That is a fact. And so that was a multi-billion-dollar project that would have been completed 7 or 8 years ago. Mr. Carney testified against that project. So this might be another...
When you're saying testified at a parliamentary committee.
He did. He testified at a parliamentary committee against a pipeline from Hardisty, Alberta to Kitimat, BC, which is exactly the project with some very minor modifications that Ms. Smith is pushing for now. So we're hoping that Mr. Carney has flip-flopped on this, and he'll go ahead with it. But what I would really say on this is when it comes to these projects, we have 38 projects the federal government has been holding up that are in the Impact Assessment Act system already.
They're in progress right now.
They only need to get a permit to go ahead. They don't need a government grant, a government handout, a press release, a photo op. They really need one thing from Mark Carney: get out of the way and grant a permit so that private money can build private projects that actually make money for our country rather than cost the taxpayer.
I still do not understand, though, why you are saying he's in the way, nothing to see here. The office, you're dismissing it as one employee. That's the CEO. I don't know how many other people have or haven't been hired. But you have Danielle Smith, Tim Houston, Wab Kinew, the business community themselves saying this is important. Danielle Smith saying be patient. How is it that you're saying nothing to see here when so many other people seem to think, across the political spectrum, seem to think that this is meaningful?
Again, I think she's right. We have to be patient because of Mark Carney's snail's pace.
But that's not what she's saying.
What I'm saying is that Mark Carney has been Prime Minister for 6 months. Now, he promised that we would move at unprecedented speeds, that this was like wartime. 6 months has gone by. Let me give you an example. The Germans built an import terminal for LNG from concept to completion in 194 days. That is not the permit or the announcement or the press release. That means the thing was functional in about the amount of time Mark Carney has been Prime Minister, during which time he has not approved a single major project. What he has done is taken 5 projects that were basically approved already, sent them to yet another bureaucracy, which is going to review them and consider them going ahead. And there is not an oil pipeline on that list. I don't want to be negative, so I'm going to be positive here. We're proposing the Canadian Sovereignty Act, which would get the government out of the way so that we could rapidly build, the private industry without taxpayer subsidies could build pipelines, mines, LNG terminals, nuclear plants, and more. It would expedite the 38 projects that have been waiting for federal approval, and it would invite the hundreds more that the federal government is blocking, according to Scott Moe. So let's pass the sovereignty. I'm offering Mark Carney to take the act and pass it. I'll give him credit for it.
Again,
and we'll
Scott
get it
Moe
done.
said there were 100 projects that were priorities. He did not say the federal government was blocking them. But I want to talk to you about a related issue here, which is about emissions, carbon emissions. I've been covering you for years. I cannot recall hearing you talk about concerns around climate change. Do you worry about what climate change will do to our planet, Pierre Poilievre?
Sure, and that's why I'm so disappointed with the very problematic approach of the Liberal government, which has been to drive up energy costs and block projects from going ahead that would help the environment.
So are you an environmentalist, Pierre Poilievre?
Sure, you can call me whatever you like.
No, well, I want to know what you'd call yourself. We are talking about sea levels rising, worried about loss of biodiversity. You worry about those things.
Sure, and I also have solutions. Like if we were to displace dirty Asian coal-fired plants with clean Canadian natural gas, according to the National Bank, we could reduce global emissions by 2.5 billion tons, which is 3 times the emissions of all of Canada for a year. But to do that, you need liquefaction terminals like the one that Prime Minister Harper approved, LNG Canada. And we shouldn't be talking about having one more. We should be talking about having 18 or 19 LNG liquefaction plants. That's the number that were proposed when the Liberals took office. And so what I propose, let's take our natural gas, which is very clean, which is very cheap in Canada. Right now, we only get $3 per million metric British thermal units, and let's sell it to Asia for $14. We could help power the most populous continent by getting them off of dirtier coal and reducing global emissions. But the real difference between myself and the Liberals on this is they believe in keeping it in the ground. Those are Mr. Carney's words, by the way. He wrote them. We can debate whether he's flip-flopped on that as well, or the conservative approach, which is let's use our energy to grow the paychecks of our people and protect the environment. They believe in energy poverty. I believe in energy abundance, and that is the approach that we would take to the environment.
You say you're worried about climate change. Why have we not seen you ever commit to emissions reductions targets?
I just did right now.
That's not a target. That's saying we should do more to reduce our emissions. That's not about meeting the Paris targets. That's not saying our 2030 targets are right, wrong, should be higher, lower.
The current government is not meeting its emissions
But
targets.
I'm asking whether you think those are valuable targets, not about what the federal government is doing, which you've been clear about.
It would be very easy. In fact, it would be very easy to meet all of those targets if we include the global reductions that the export of Canadian nuclear and natural gas would engender. And so I'd say, sure, not only could we could displace the equivalent of 3 years of emissions in Canada by sending our Canadian natural gas over to Asia and displacing dirty coal. I mean, the Asian economies are adding these coal-fired plants one after the other because they don't have access to affordable natural gas. We have the most affordable gas. It's easy for us to liquefy it because our cold climate does most of the work. And we have the shortest shipping distances to both Asia and Europe of any country in the Americas. So why would we not use that kind of pragmatic approach that enriches rather than impoverishes us?
I want to turn to another one of your policy proposals here because our
Sure.
time is finite. You have called on the government to get rid of the temporary foreign worker program. The Prime Minister has said he will adjust the program to make it more strategic. Why do you believe that there is never a need for these workers outside of the agricultural sector?
Because we have unemployed Canadians. Since Mr. Carney took office, we've hemorrhaged 86,000 jobs. Really hard to believe.
Surely some of that is related to U.S. tariffs and the uncertainty.
The tariffs that Mr. Carney promised he would manage to get rid of through his promise to negotiate a win by July 21st. And it's also, according to the Business Council, the red tape of the federal government is responsible for more economic damage than even the tariffs. That's what the business community says. But it's true that in fairness, Mr. Carney has failed to keep his promise on negotiating a deal, and that has obviously hurt our economy.
He said he would only sign a deal if it was good for Canada. He did not promise a deal under no conditions.
He promised to, quote, negotiate a win. He promised to have a deal by July 21st. Those are broken promises. Now, you asked me about temporary foreign workers, and so but I had to respond to your interjection. And so on temporary foreign workers, we've got 350,000 people in Toronto alone who are unemployed. We have the worst job numbers since the 1990s for our youth. And when you have 14% unemployment for youth, it is appalling that we're bringing in low-wage temporary foreign workers who are exploited again and again, exploited by those seeking to profit off of paying below market wages. And the Liberal government is on track this year to having the largest number of temporary foreign workers in Canadian history. What I'm saying is we should do is...
There are a multitude of factors affecting the job market. AI, tariffs. Some of the numbers of temporary foreign workers you've talked about more broadly are renewals of people who have been here for some time. Do you worry about telling Canadians that these job losses, tying it directly to temporary foreign workers, that people will perceive that as blaming temporary foreign workers?
No, because I haven't blamed temporary foreign workers. I've said precisely the opposite. They are great people. They're not to blame. The Liberal government is to blame. It's the Liberals that are bringing people. The temporary foreign workers are just seeing a job opportunity and getting a work permit. They're just doing what the Liberal government told them to do. But I think it's appalling that when I go to towns across this country, parents tell me their kids cannot get jobs to start off and start saving for school because, in part, the 100,000 plus temporary foreign workers that employers prefer to have in some cases because they can pay them less. And my answer is
let's say they will work shifts other people won't.
Let's raise wages. And what I say to everybody is raise wages. Let's pay more. If you want to attract Canadian kids, pay great Canadian wages. A stronger take-home pay is one of my big priorities for this fall session. And that means ensuring that even though there aren't a lot of jobs in Canada right now, they should go to Canadians first.
I would like to switch gears here and talk about a developing news story, which is the assassination of U.S. conservative activist Charlie Kirk. The FBI has this morning announced that they have arrested a suspect. In this country, when we talk about political violence, you and the Prime Minister have both said it is never justified. But we know that there are growing threats against politicians. That includes yourself and your family.
Yes.
Are you worried?
I worry for my family. I'll be honest with you. We have had very serious threats to the point where the RCMP decided that it merited protection for my family and I for over a prolonged period of time. And they've been multiple, and they have been serious threats. I think we need to secure all of our political leaders, not just me. I think all the political leaders and ministers who face real threats according to the RCMP's assessment, they should have protection so that something like this does not happen on our turf here in Canada.
The fact that you're saying that should happen suggests that perhaps there are instances where you think it's not happening. There's not sufficient securing.
Listen, I don't know if you can secure everything, but I think we should do I'm not going to accuse the government of anything on that front. I know that all the political leaders would share my view that this is unfortunately a risk that's out there, and we should do everything we can to mitigate it.
More broadly, what do you think we should be doing differently on a more societal level, political dialogue to try to address this?
We don't know what motivated this person, so I have a hard time saying what different behavior would have avoided him doing this act. But I think we need to make clear that you can't shut people down just because you disagree with them. Obviously, Mr. Kirk was killed because he expressed a contrary point of view. He said something that somebody didn't think that they should have to hear. But that's democracy. Democracy doesn't mean you get to silence someone just because you disagree with what they have to say. Disagreement and debate is necessary in a free and open democracy, and we can't let the terrorist who carried out this assassination change that.
Is there a change? So that's what we shouldn't do. Mm-hmm. Is there a change? We've heard about the idea of disagreeing agreeably. Is there a tonal change in this country, in Canada's politics, that is needed to keep people safe in the face of this climate?
I think we have to inculcate the idea that we're all going to go through life hearing things we don't agree with, and we don't get to shut down contrary opinions. We have to debate them. We have to. Sometimes it's frustrating, maddening, but that's life in a democracy. And, we have to raise our kids, and we have to teach all citizens that freedom of speech includes hearing things you don't like. And we can't censor people, attack them, try to destroy their lives, fire them, kick them out of their place of work, whether it's a media organization or carry out violence as a mechanism to silence views that we don't agree with.
Obviously, there's a pretty dramatic difference between a political assassination and someone, the examples you gave of somebody losing their job because they said something offensive to a reporter in front of a TV camera. I think there was a very public example of that, losing their job. Those things are not really the same.
No, they're not. That's not what I was saying. What I'm saying is that we need to live in a society where people are free to express themselves, and where everyone understands they're going to have to hear contrary opinions. I hear them all the time. It's part of the reality. But this example, I guess,
is relevant. Is that particular case of the reporters being harassed, people yelling this offensive "F her" right in the talks about the limits. Like it's true. I understand what you're saying, that people should be able to speak their minds, but we also need limits on what is appropriate when people shouldn't be harassed in the workplace and whatnot. Like, do you think it's inappropriate for someone to lose their job when they conduct what appears to be an act of public harassment?
Of course.
Yeah. I guess I'm just trying to understand where you see the line, given that you put all those things in the same category.
Where I see the line is that people have the freedom to express political opinions that are contrary to others. But of course, that does not include carrying out harassment against. In fact, my point was exactly the opposite of that. If you're harassing someone or you're aggressing against someone because of their political point of view, then you're behaving inappropriately, and that should not go on.
Okay, we're going to end the conversation there. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. So, to dig a bit deeper into Mark Carney's major projects announcement and how the Conservatives are responding, I'm joined by Tonda MacCharles, Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Toronto Star, and Stuart Thomson, Parliamentary Bureau Chief for the National Post.
Stuart, Tonda, welcome back to the house.
Good morning.
Hey, Catherine.
Great to be back with you guys. A lot of people are eager to see this list. They were eager to see this list. Stuart, now that it's out, who are the biggest winners or biggest losers here?
Well, right now, I think everyone's a winner, and that's kind of the feeling.
I feel
you
great.
get.
Are you running for office?
But that is the vibe. And, if you don't believe me, just go look at Danielle Smith's Twitter feed right now. Even though there was no, distinct Alberta project, she was tweeting in all caps about how much she likes Mark Carney. So I think we are in this phase right now where it's all a little bit hypothetical. And of course, there will be criticisms. And, some of these projects, they have been in the works for a while. They're not big surprises to us that these are the projects. But right now, it's looking pretty good. And I think for the government, what becomes difficult is the sort of ongoing communications challenge of how do you make Canadians believe that you are doing this when these are kind of remote projects? You might have to do a lot of ribbon cuttings to show that you are doing something. And I think that is the challenge. This week was the easy part.
Tonda, what was your biggest takeaway?
Oh, I don't think you can say that everybody's a winner out of this. I actually think that out of the remarks Mr. Carney gave this week, pretty clearly environmentalists are very worried that the environment is a loser coming out of this, that the Carney government is going all in on energy development, and the whole energy superpower agenda he's setting out is very much a retreat from not just the Trudeau policy book, but from our Paris targets, the climate change, climate action-oriented agenda that the Liberals for a decade had been leading. Mm-hmm. So I think that to hear many of them talk, they're very worried about it. So I would say that. And if we're just going to sort of look at winners and losers, look, Alberta, Danielle Smith, she was a big winner. So was BC. They got a couple of big projects going. But if you look at that list and you listen to some of the other premiers, when has Doug Ford not come out in public and praised Mark Carney? Well, guess what? He didn't do it yesterday or Thursday, whenever this announcement came out. And he, I think, is quite disappointed that they did not get the designation for nation-building projects on Ontario soil, like the Ring of Fire, like a bunch of high-speed rail and road projects and tunnel projects he wants. So that's where I would say we're losers.
Stuart, you mentioned Danielle Smith a moment ago. We had Pierre Poilievre on the show earlier. What is your sense of how challenging it makes this for him to prosecute this case that nothing meaningful is happening when she sounds so surprisingly elated about her conversations with Mark Carney?
Yeah. And the most difficult part of this situation for Poilievre is that there actually is no challenge on Mark Carney's left. So he can keep doing this. He can eat Poilievre's lunch to the right, and he's not getting any blowback for it. And during the April election, environmental issues were a non-issue. It was way down on the list of salient issues. The NDP is struggling to be even a tiny bit relevant right now. There was a couple of murmurs from the caucus retreat this week from progressive MPs saying, well, we should probably care about climate targets, that we are Liberals after all. But they were murmurs. There was not that big of a problem on Mark Carney's left. And it has really put Pierre Poilievre into a corner because everything Pierre Poilievre would have done in power, aside from maybe some criminal justice stuff, I think Mark Carney is doing right now. And Poilievre can only make the case that he would maybe do it better. But you can't see that because he's in opposition. So it is tough.
Tonda, when it comes to Danielle Smith's biggest wish here, which is this pipeline, she sounds quite positive. The Prime Minister has talked about it being potentially part of the path forward, but there are challenges, right? Everything.
Huge challenges. So, no company's proposed one. No company's prepared to go public and say, we'll build it, or set out the parameters under which they'd build it. The problem is much of the world is trying to decarbonize carbon products. And right now, the oil patch, it's banking on the massive project in Alberta to capture the carbon emissions and store them underground. And that technology is hard to scale, and it's untried, but I guess unproven, we should say, at scale. And so Mr. Carney is also kind of giving them the pathway, literally, towards that pipeline. But no company has come forward and said, we're all in. And, the same goes for some of the oil development out on the East Coast as well in Atlantic Canada. Look, there's a big project that got federal and provincial approval off Newfoundland and Labrador, and the company pulled out because the business case wasn't there. So I think this faces a lot of challenges. It's not just whether Carney and Smith are all in.
Stuart, speaking about carbon emissions, the environment, in the conversation with Pierre Poilievre, I asked him about his worries around climate change. I'm curious what you made of that exchange and what he had to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's another one of these incredibly interesting moments because Mark Carney is doing things on the environment that I never would have thought possible, even for Mark Carney, even if you'd asked me in February.
Like what?
So, for example, the carbon tax is the first one that I would have expected. And then we had some movement on the clean fuels thing that Pierre Poilievre had been talking about earlier this summer. And now it looks like they're getting shaky on the targets. They've paused the EV mandate. And we've even seen reporting that the emissions cap that the Justin Trudeau's government put into place could be removed. I don't know if it will be. It will be a negotiation, but just the fact that that's up for consideration is striking. So again, if you're Pierre Poilievre, you're in kind of a hard spot because if you were to say, I'd go as far as Mark Carney, I'd go even farther on the environment, you might get the blowback and none of the benefits of what you would do with the economy. So it's a tough spot. He's kind of doing Harper-era messaging on this. It's not much different than what we've seen before. It's the Liberals where the real movement is, and I think that is unsettling the Conservatives.
Tonda?
Yeah, that's what I was struck by, that Mr. Poilievre, in endorsing the idea that clean Canadian oil and natural gas should displace dirty coal in China and Asia and India and elsewhere, is the Harper playbook on why they pulled out of the, at that point, I believe it was the Kyoto targets, right? There's been targets since Rio. There have been targets since the 90s, and we're still not there. And yes, it takes political will, but it also takes action.
We are only a couple of days away from the parties getting back to the House of Commons. So I know you're excited. I see you laughing at me, Stuart. It's been a heck of a time in the interim, right? Mark Carney, who came into this whole process saying, I'm not a politician. Well, he's really into it now. Pierre Poilievre, of course, dealt with the election loss, his by-election win in Alberta. How do you think these two men have changed compared to the last time the two of them walked into the House of Commons?
I think that is a good question. I watched Mark Carney's first appearance in the House. I went down to the gallery just because I wanted to see it, and he was much better at it than I thought he would be. It was one of those moments where you're kind of, as a journalist, you're hoping for maybe a disaster you can write about, but he was fine. Pierre Poilievre, though, I have actually detected some signs of change. And you know what? If you're listening to this show, you've detected some signs of change because he's on it twice in the last couple of months. So I do wonder how far that will go. Is this a real change from Poilievre, that he's changed his demeanor, he's doing more interviews, his MPs are maybe doing more interviews, and there just is sort of a different style. I don't know if that will translate into anything on the policy side, but I think style was important to Poilievre. I think that's something, if he improves upon it, he might see some gains. So the moment where we'll really know, though, is QP, where he is in his element, but that is when he's at his sort of prosecutorial element, and he likes to do it.
Tonda?
I think that the style points that we did see some, I guess, tactical changes, I would say, since the election. But since his win of the by-election in Alberta and his return to a seat in Parliament, I've seen Mr. Poilievre pick up back where he left off somewhat. Although he does say he plans to propose solutions, not just oppose. We'll see. Mr. Carney, on the other hand, I think is leaning in more to the comms, at which he wasn't so great initially. But now he's into these sweeping speeches and he's trying to frame everything in big communications strategies, but policy strategies. And I think, though, that he's going to face his biggest challenge in delivering results. He pitched himself as a man for the crisis and the moment. Let's see. And now the rubber hits the road on that.
Stuart Thomson, Tonda MacCharles, thank you very much.
Thanks.
And coming up just a little later on, we'll talk to a former Liberal cabinet minister about the tone of politics today and how to make it better, along with her take on Justin Trudeau's leadership. I'm Catherine Cullen. You're listening to The House, making politics make sense. Make sure to give us a follow so you never miss an episode, and tell us what you think of the show. You can email us at thehouse@cbc.ca. Mark Carney has identified 5 projects that are at the front of the line as nation builders: 2 mines, a nuclear reactor, increased natural gas output, and a port expansion. But just how much of a difference does getting this thumbs up from the federal government actually make? Dan Meyerson is behind one of those projects. He is the executive chairman of Foran Mining Corporation. They run the McIlvenna Bay Copper Mine Project in Saskatchewan, which wants to mine over 1 million tons of ore containing copper and zinc. Dan, welcome to the house.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Your project is in this top tranche, one of the 5 projects on this coveted list. Help us understand what that means. What actually changes for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's huge, to be honest. It has an impact in so many different ways. I think, obviously, to make the list initially and the public recognition is something that I'm just so proud of for the company and for the team, really, and the people. You know, the average Canadian would not think about our mine or about copper or about zinc or about these types of critical minerals. But the average Canadian, if they were to look inside their house and realize what actually keeps things warm. How do we have plumbing? How do we have electricity? That is all copper, all zinc. Do we want to have an electric revolution and have, electric cars and hybrid and AI and data centers? Well, without copper, that is never going to happen. And so this kind of recognition and to be a project of national interest has just been so wonderful. I was at site this week and there yesterday, and you can just see how much everyone's buzzing because they know what it really means, how important it actually is.
In terms of what this means concretely, what about the financing side? Are you hoping for money from the federal government?
Yeah, I think capital and financing is probably one of the most important things for the mining industry because it's such a capital-intensive industry when you get started. The federal government has been fantastic in some of their programs that they have initiated. We are very hopeful that they continue to expand and grow the critical minerals investment tax credits program and others like that, because it can just have such a meaningful impact for our project and our company and our future growth in Canada. So that's something that, of course, we're very, very hopeful for.
C5 does allow the federal government to exempt mines from government regulations that can include environmental assessments. Is it your intention to use this opportunity to seek those kinds of exemptions if you expand?
No, it's not, because you see, we've already got a positive EIA, so environmental impact assessment, and we've gone through that successfully. So it's not our intention to necessarily apply for anything under that. However, as we look for expansions, again, we won't need to do a future EIA, but you will need additional permits. So it just provides greater certainty for these permits.
Dan Meyerson, Executive Chairman of the Foran Mining Corporation. Carney also named projects at an earlier stage. I asked the CEO of Alto, the company behind the high-speed rail proposal that would run from Quebec City to Toronto, what it means to be on the B list rather than the A list. Martin Imblot said there's just one list.
There are a couple of projects, 5 projects that are way more advanced and ready to start construction. And for us, it's giving the foreseeability of when we're ready to start the approval process. We will have a timeline that is more definite and certain. So we're not there yet, but we'll be there shortly. So just a question of timing.
So help us understand. I'm trying very hard not to say fast track when we're talking about drains, but we heard from Minister LeBlanc the idea that this might have taken 8 years. Now it will take 4. Why are you able to get things moving more quickly now that you've gotten this sort of endorsement, if we can call it that, from the federal government?
It's all about credibility and foreseeability. There are things that you cannot compress. We will do the engineering the same way. We will consult with the indigenous communities. We will be on the ground meeting with all the communities for the consultation period. That is so key. So there's no shortcut there. But once we file the environmental studies, then we lose control. This is where sometimes it takes 3, 4, 5, 6 years. So the government is now saying that once you file your stuff, in 2 years, you'll get your approval. So that could allow us to shrink the development period from 7, 8 years to 4 to 5 and then start construction in 4 or 5 years.
So start construction in
Yes.
4 or 5 years. Anyone who is wondering when they might be able to ride this train, what is the answer?
So it's not going to be one single project. It's a network of 1,000 kilometers, one of the largest endeavor never done by Canada since the St. Lawrence Seaway. So we'll probably have 4 different projects. So we will do it in phases. So if we were to start with the first phase in 4 or 5 years, that phase would probably require 6, 7, 8 years of construction. Then we won't wait for the first phase to be completed. We'll start the other ones. So the whole thing might need 12, 13, 14 years to construct, but it's 1,000 kilometers. So
I do feel like while on the one hand, people get very excited when they hear about being able to travel so much more quickly than is possible right now. The other reaction that I often hear from people when the idea of a high-speed train comes up is like, wake me up when it happens. This feels like one of those projects that we have been hearing about since time immemorial, that it would be such a great thing, and it's just not moving forward. What would you say to those people who say,
I
like,
get the
wake me up
frustration.
when we get there?
I like to say, Catherine, that this should have been done 40 years ago. Like France did it, and Spain has done it over the last 20 years. But now the Crown Corporation is created. The development work has started. So we have engineering doing the work as we speak. We will consult with the communities in the coming weeks and months. We will have a corridor to present early next year to the population. And we will file our environmental studies maybe in a year and a half or 2 years. So it's all real. And then when we get the green light with the approval, we will hire real construction workers in Ontario and Quebec to start this project. So we're real. We just need to do it prudently and be very grounded with the communities. They need to know more about the project, which we'll be doing in the coming months.
You talk about still going ahead with all the environmental impact assessments, but is there any part of the environmental regulations that you would hope to use C5 to put aside?
No, C5 is providing me with the opportunity to say to the public sector, I can start in 29 or 30. So get involved in this project. And once we've done all the work, Ottawa is saying to us, well, if you provide us with all the information, in 2 years, you'll have the permit. They're not saying that we're not respecting the environmental laws. It's just that the process will be way shorter and certain. And that's where the merit is, because otherwise, you said it, the frustration is, when will that happen? Well, now I have a date that I can use, both for the consultation, but also, more importantly, to engage the private sector.
Part of this broader conversation that we're having right now is obviously the context of this trade with the United States. We know the federal government said just last week, Buy Canadian is going to be a big plank of their response. You're a Crown Corporation. To what extent will Canadian materials be used in the building or be required to be used in the building?
It's going to be significant. I was in Hamilton last week for the Steel Summit and I had the chance to say to foundries and steel workers and to the minister, I need 4,000 kilometers of steel track. Today, none can be done in Canada. There's no production of steel tracks for a railway. So it's a unique opportunity to engage with the steel industry this fall and next year for them to prepare to provide us with those 4,000 kilometers. It's huge. So the incentive for us to buy Canadian is very high, and we'll do the same thing with the civil work, the ballast that we need to do. So I call our project an arm or an armament of massive construction, just because it's a tool and we need all the resources that are coming from Canada.
Given the point you just made about the fact that it's not possible right now, do you have any concern about Canada's ability to shift things around to be able to meet the needs?
I absolutely needed the sign of yesterday. Now I can go to Hamilton and Contrecoeur and say to the shop, I have a date, I have a mandate, I'm on the list, so prepare yourself because I'm going to be buying millions, if not billions of dollars of steel in the next few years. The day before yesterday, I did not have that credibility. Now I can engage, and they will be in a position to change and adapt their system to provide those steel tracks.
Martin, thank you very much for this conversation.
Thanks for having me.
Alto CEO Martin Imblot.
To the young girls out there who are thinking about politics and about whether it's for them, do it! And when you do it, don't be afraid to run like a girl. And I'll be there cheering you on.
Then Federal Minister Catherine McKenna announcing in 2021 that she was leaving politics. That parting message is at the center of her new memoir out this month called Run Like a Girl. It traces her path to federal politics and sheds some light on what goes on in the back rooms of government. How would she advise anyone who wants to run on navigating the sometimes toxic side of politics? Catherine McKenna, thank you for coming into studio and welcome back to the House.
Great to join you, Catherine.
You were moved hearing your own voice there. I can see some real emotion in your eyes. What happened there?
Well, look, I had a great run in politics, and then I decided it was done. And it was hard writing this book, if I'm really honest. It's not just about politics. It's about, like, how do you make change? And I've been talking to a lot of girls, a lot of young women. I was just talking to a mayor yesterday who's, she's amazing and so competent, but getting a lot of hate. And I think this is a really tough time. And when I wrote the book, I found it really hard to write about certain things. But I want it to be an inspirational book for folks. But I also want to deal with some really serious issues. Like, I want people to go into politics. But I think there are some problems that also need to be addressed.
Okay, so let's start by giving people a bit of a sense of some of what they would learn about your experience in politics from your book. You say you really hated question period. You didn't like the tone at all, and you actually describe having your tone kind of policed by people in your government. Once you received a note from someone in your own party that said, "Don't sound so angry." What happened there?
I don't know. When I came into politics, I don't know. I had this view that, it's democracy. We're elected. We represent the people. And I got into the House of Commons, and I just had no idea that people would be screaming at us. And they're kind of laughing at you and heckling, and then they interrupt you. And often things are really done for clips. And I think everyone did it. I ended up doing it with that one example you gave. It was Pierre Poilievre, who was saying something about how, like, job-killing carbon tax, how I was, like, ruining everyone's lives or something, which is obviously patently untrue. And I was really mad because they had no climate plan. And climate change we're in an existential crisis. And so I just said, like, oh, you care so much about money. Well, you should care about the cost of climate change, that we're passing on to our kids. And
so what went through your mind when you get this note that was, it says in the book, it's either from PMO or the whip's office, you're not sure, and it says, "Don't sound so angry"?
Well, look, I'm my own person, so I was really mad. And, I guess I could have taken it one of two ways. Okay, I'm not going to sound so angry. Or I'm going to be like, damn right, I'm allowed to be angry because this is a really important issue and we need to be acting. And all these young people and others, Canadians, want to see action. So I, first of all, felt like, okay, I guess women can't get angry. That's annoying. But then I fell into the trap, I guess, too, because I was like, okay, fine, I'm going to clip it and I'm going to put it out on social media because I knew it would resonate with a lot of people that wanted climate action. And of course, it got thousands of likes.
But that's a trap.
No, you know what? I realize that now. It's a trap because you think if you're the loudest, you think if you have these sound bites, that is what makes change. And that isn't what makes change. And I was desperate to make change on climate. Like, I was given this job. I felt a huge responsibility, but a huge opportunity. And so, sometimes I fell into that. I don't think I did it a lot, but I think also it is okay for women to be angry in life sometimes.
You dealt with threats and abuse. Some of it was quite gendered. Being called climate Barbie, people may remember the C word was written on your office in spray paint. We're still seeing harassment against Canadian politicians and beyond. People being chased, being spit on, having their families threatened. What thoughts do you have about how we change this?
Well, Catherine, it's worse than ever. I think I was kind of on the front lines, maybe with the environment minister from Alberta, Shannon Phillips, because there was this weird circle of, like, misogyny and climate denial all in one, and we got attacked. And it was really hard, but I was able to say, like, it's not really about me, really. It's just because I'm doing this job. But I talked to so many people in politics, and it's women and men. It is on both sides of the political spectrum, but I would say, and I know some people won't like it, I will say often these conservative politicians these days are, more prone to making personal attacks, and then they have these right-wing rage farming groups that then amplify them, and then social media, really promotes this.
You are talking about the proportion, and I don't have a measure of that in front of me.
Yeah.
Pierre Poilievre did have a right-wing commentator threaten sexual violence against his wife. Michelle Rumpel-Garner has talked about being chased down the street. She's received death threats. So you're making comments about the proportion, and I understand that. But it is clearly something that is affecting people across the political spectrum. So I come back to the same comment. How do you think we can make it even marginally better?
Well, I think that I've really spent a lot of time thinking about this. I mean, the number one way is for Canadians to say it's not okay. And in my book, I highlight former Prime Minister Jean Chrétien, and he was a mentor to me. And he always said something that always stuck with me: is Canadians are reasonable, be reasonable. I think Canadians do not like this. When I called out being called climate Barbie, or, unfortunately, I had these incidents, and they'd be so high profile. When someone writes a C word in my office, like, people would come to me in the streets, men, women, whatever, whether they're conservatives, liberal, NDP, or nothing, they would say it's not okay. So I think that's number one. And part of the reason I talk about it, I don't love talking about it. I find it really hard, but it's not okay. And I want Canadians to say it's not okay. But I think there are other things we need to do. I mean, we do have to provide proper security to politicians who are under threat.
I want to say, in the book, you talk about the RCMP giving you a panic button for your home, but telling you, according to your book, that it was only going to work during office hours.
Yeah, that was super handy. I was like, okay, so I guess it's called 911. And I have to give a real shout out to the Ottawa Police. It was Police Chief Slowly. He was always on it. Like, he was aware of incidents. And, I think the RCMP got better, and they're under-resourced, and they have a mandate that has a lot of different aspects. I think we probably, as one of the other recommendations, I think we need to have a dedicated force that looks after the security of politicians. Later, I found out just a month or two ago, I had no idea because I was never briefed on these, but I received the third most death threats. And I don't even know what that means. What is a death threat? Because I got a lot of different forms of threats. And certainly the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, got huge attacks. And as you say, politicians of all sorts. I think we also need to regulate social media. And I know people don't some people say, well, freedom of speech. I am sorry. That is not freedom of speech. My freedom of speech was impeded because I was being attacked all the time. I think we need to hold these social media companies to account.
Okay. I want to talk a bit about Justin Trudeau. There are some criticisms of him in this book. I think a sense of unhappiness with him comes out through the book. You write, quote, "Our biggest problem, the Prime Minister was aloof and just didn't seem interested in his ministers or caucus members beyond his childhood friends Dominic LeBlanc and Mark Miller." Can you give me an example of how that affected your work?
Well, look, I will first say that I feel really fortunate that, Justin Trudeau ran a great election. I decided to run because I believed in his vision. And as minister, he cared about climate change. He gave me, leeway to act on climate. And, he had really good advisors who cared about climate change. Gerald Butts is one, but there were others. But he had a style. And it's funny because people say, what is the most useful thing your background, whether it's a lawyer or anything? I was like, no, it's because I'm a swimmer. Being a competitive swimmer, which makes you set goals and work hard, but also being part of a team. And I think what was lacking in his leadership style was this feeling that we were all on a team. And that, it was even hard to get meetings with him on really important issues, to look him in the eye and say, are you going to back me up on carbon pricing and giving all the money back to people? I needed him to say that. And I was with Bill Morneau. It was very hard to get a meeting. So, look, I mean, it was hard to criticize him because I don't love being a critic. But I think that there are just lessons about politics because people are giving up a lot. And I'm really a team player. Like, I really want to do things. But you need to bring the team together and make everyone feel like we're trying to achieve the same goal, or else things they start to fall apart.
It sounds like, though, it was not just about being a team. You also say when it comes to the gender-balanced cabinet that while it was the right move, this is a quote, it also started to sound like a marketing ploy or gimmick to make him look good.
So I guess it's also just, being a woman in life. Sometimes you're just like, there are some things that are frustrating because people think that, You know, that I was really happy when he said there's going to be a gender balanced cabinet. I had no idea I'd be in it, but I was just like, we're half the population. We have super competent women. And by the way they make cabinets is very bizarre because you got to have all these regional interests. And so I was really happy. I thought that was a right move and a good thing to do. But then I think we all just wanted to get on with it. Like, we were chosen because we were competent. I mean, there were other factors, but then it became annoying. And I think it became annoying to a lot of people because, like, even my friends would be like, okay, enough of this whole feminist budget, feminist everything. And
do you believe he's a feminist? He talked about that a lot.
You know, I don't find that an interesting question. I mean, I think...
Really? I mean, that's one of he would say, I think that's one of the defining things of his prime ministership. You don't find it an interesting question?
I mean, look, I care about outcomes. I don't care. Like, there was a lot of marketing, I think, in our government. I just care. I got in to do things. And so, you know, whether the prime minister is a feminist or not, I assume he would consider himself a feminist. I think he did some very good things. But I think we actually had a real impact on the lives of women. That is more important, right? Okay. Like, you know, bringing in the Canada Child Benefit, bringing in, you know, daycare. Those things are important. I don't know. I'm sick of labels a bit. I'm a feminist 100%. But I think that, you know, in government, you just have to be kind of reasonable. And we all had to wear the mantle a bit of being a woman. I was like, actually, I really had to take this on. I'm suddenly Climate Barbie. I am just a regular person who have this job and I got to get it done. I don't wake up every morning and say, I'm a woman. I just like every morning I'm like, I got to go do work and I got to get outcomes.
Well, let's talk about outcomes. Let's talk about the consumer carbon price. You offer a lot of thoughts in your book about why this ultimately failed. You direct the majority of the blame, I think much of it, towards the government and Justin Trudeau, particularly the decision to do that carve-out around home heating oil. You also talk about the need to make the case to the public more. You talk about how you believe there should have been more government advertising around it. Do you believe that any of the responsibility for this policy not working out lies on your own shoulders?
Sure. Like, I think that I tried to unpack this because, first of all, I will say most of the blame, if I am going to allocate blame, in my view, goes to conservative politicians. This was a small c conservative policy where we're, you know, putting a price on pollution and giving more money back so that it actually meant that if you were low income or medium income, you were better off. And it's using the market. You can have choices. You can decide you're going to pay it or you're going to have other, you know, you try to reduce your emissions. And I had spent a lot of time with conservative politicians, conservative men, actually, including, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Gordon Campbell, who was a, you know, conservative, small c conservative premier. But then it came to these, how do you do hard things? I think, honestly, I feel like I did everything I could in the sense that I feel like we designed the policy in a way, and I had to push hard that all the money went back. The problem is we didn't use the tools. Like, if you're in government, we thought we were, you know, not going to be like conservatives, so we weren't going to advertise things. Well, that's really great. It doesn't have to be partisan advertising. You need to tell people that they're going to get money back. That was a key part of our messaging, but we decided we weren't going to do that. We also decided...
I wonder about people hearing this who will hear you saying, well, we should have spent more government money convincing people of this, and who might balk at that.
I think it is the response. Well, by the way, Doug Ford and other people actually used tax dollars to mislead people on carbon pricing and put stickers on pumps that didn't tell people they got money back. But look, it is the responsibility of government to justify what they are doing. And so you have to be out there selling it. And it's hard now. We have a very fragmented media environment. And I just think we should have we ended up, I think, doing that. But we should have been telling people, you are getting money back because we are putting a price on carbon pollution. That's how we're tackling climate change and thinking about you.
Let's talk about the moment now. Mark Carney, somebody that you have called a good friend. You've publicly endorsed him. He is the one who ultimately killed the consumer carbon tax. He has been non-committal recently about whether or not Canada will meet its climate targets for 2030 and 2035. He paused the electric vehicle sales mandate. Do you think the country is backtracking right now on the environment?
Look, I supported Mark Carney because I thought, we really needed a prime minister that was strong on standing up to Donald Trump and standing up for Canada's sovereignty and jobs, and also who would be committed to tackling climate change. And he was really supportive when I was in government. He came over right after Brexit, actually, to do a conversation with me in front of a large audience on Bay Street to talk about the importance of climate policies, including carbon pricing. And we worked together internationally when I was out of politics. I think he is committed to climate action. He has said this in his book, Values. He talks about the importance, that we're in an existential crisis, climate crisis, and that we have clean solutions that are, a huge economic opportunity. So I think, he announced major projects. I think it is important. We have to get projects done. And I think that we're waiting to see his climate plan. And I think it's critically important that we continue acting on climate as much for our competitiveness and jobs and future as it is for climate change.
Would you run to be part of a Mark Carney government?
No.
You done with politics completely?
So I think it's important, and maybe it's important for me to say this, because a lot of people thought I left politics because of the attacks I got. I didn't love that. In a way, I almost stayed because I'm kind of Irish. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to stay to fight these people. But I just always think about how to make change. And I realized that I could make more change outside of politics. And people didn't believe it. Hopefully, I'm showing it in my book. I'm doing a lot of work internationally, women leading on climate, helping young people. But I think it's always, where's the best place to make change? And part of the reason I wrote this book is it can't just be like, of course I care about climate, and everyone's like, you got to do more. I'm one person, and we now need to support young people and women and others. And so I am out there ready to help, others that are going to step up into politics, but I don't feel the need to be in politics.
You put out the question there, where is the best place to create change? And you seem to be saying that for you, it's outside of politics right now. The message in this book seems to be, run like a girl, like go for it. If you're listening, it's the comments we heard on the top. If you're thinking about it, do it. But when you read this book, Catherine McKenna, the threats, the challenges in your home life, being told by a member of your own government that you sound too angry, you saying right now, maybe I can make more change outside of government. Why run and not just run away from this kind of thing?
So that would be hopefully the wrong message from the book. I am honest. I think we owe it to people to be honest. I think it's important that I speak up against the hate that women and others get in politics because it's not okay. And people will not want to go into politics. So many people have said, I saw what you went through. I don't want to go in.
So why is it worth it in your mind? I mean, that's quite a lot of hardship you describe.
It's worth it because our country is worth it and democracy is worth it and making change through politics is worth it. I did it. I had a great time and I feel really fortunate that I got to help build a climate plan and I got to be part of a government that was, doing the Canada Child Benefit, raising hundreds of thousands of kids out of poverty, that we brought in refugees, that we did all these things. I left because I felt like how do I make change? I felt like it was time to do work internationally on climate. But I want, you'll read my book and people might be like, why is she talking about growing up in Hamilton in in an Irish Catholic home, but going to a French Catholic school? Because I'm not extraordinary. I'm just a person that really wants to make change. And I did it outside of politics. I did it inside of politics. I'm doing it outside of politics again. But I want those young people, the women, the broader diversity to say, yeah, you know what? I believe in our country. I believe that it is important that people are represented, that I can bring something to our democracy. So I'm going to step up and run, and I'm going to bring my energy and my ideas. And the last thing we can do is give up on democracy. But I am worried. I'm 100% worried. Look what happened. Charlie Kirk, who I probably disagreed with almost everything he said, is assassinated. That's not okay. And we really need to get back to being reasonable. As I say, I think John Chrétien is always right. Well, not always right, but he was certainly right on a lot of things. And he said, Canadians are reasonable, be reasonable. And I think we need to have a reset. Everyone, that starts in question period, and that starts in what politicians are putting out in social media, but it extends to regular Canadians. We've got to stop shouting and screaming at each other, and we can have vigorous disagreement. Fine, that's good. But we have to stop being so polarized. And it's really hard. And as I say, I reflect on how I got into that too, because I wanted to win. I wanted to get carbon pricing. I wanted to land important policies. But politics really matters, and our democracy really matters, and it's fragile, and it's under a lot of threat right now. And also for young people, I look at how hard it is. I have 3, teens, early 20s, and they've gone through COVID. They've always lived with a climate crisis. We now have a crisis in democracy. We've got AI. We still have to be inspired, and I want to inspire them.
Catherine McKenna, thank you for this conversation.
Thanks.
Former federal minister Catherine McKenna, whose new memoir, Run Like a Girl, is out September 23rd. Okay, that is it for us this week, but great news. With the new week being the return of Parliament, we're bringing back the fabulous House Party pod. For about a month, me and my admittedly nerdy political friends are going to help you navigate the many challenges Canada has to tackle in just a few short weeks. Crime, housing, immigration, and yes, that sobering budget. Look for House Party in your podcast feed on Wednesday. Our crew on the House is Kristen Everson, Emma Godmere, Benjamin Lopez-Steven, and our senior producer is Jennifer Chevalier. Technical production by Miguel Plant. I am Catherine Cullen. Thank you so much for listening.